there we go.
I don't know. I'm Ryan. I'm like a 2-year-old trying to get that repost off before the thing happens. I just can't. I don't know. Whatever.
It's not that hard, man.
It's not that hard.
It's not.
It
It's really easy, man.
It's
I just actually
not hard at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's two choices, baby. Putting that back on you, man. You're deciding not to do it.
I was in there, and then I'm hearing it twice, and I'm like, okay, how do I repost this? But I'm actually in the live event instead of the actual event. Every time I click on it, brings me to the live event, and then I get two sounds going on in the background. I'm looking at it, it's like 39 seconds. I got time. I flip back to ours. It says like 11 seconds. I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have time. Yeah, man, Fetch and Unleash Dog Rescue. Like that. That's a good name.
Yes, sir, baby. Yes, sir. But what's going on, my man? I saw yesterday ran a little bit long. You guys went for that full hour. What would you take away from that episode? I feel like anytime you get Nicole, like she's an amazing person, and she's always on these amazing podcasts. She has her own, I think, Ladies Leadership Coalition, the LLC. Yeah. So yeah, what was some takeaways when I left yesterday?
You know what? It was really cool. In having her discuss the different levels that she goes in order to really solidify that relationship. Like she'll even go to some of the CEOs of the companies that her team works with, and kind of start interacting with the CEO as the CEO, developing kind of like a multi-stage relationship with the company as opposed to the individual. And she said it was like, it's so amazing because the CEO will come to her and say, okay, and then she'll be able to sit with the team, and and then it's kind of like this multi-layered ability to serve the client, and the CEO will be like, here's the mandates, here's kind of what the operations are, here's what the different departments are. So when you're making a decision with that a traffic manager brings to you, making kind of what she referred to as like a multi-tier decision, a ninja button. And it was super cool. I learned a lot from that, especially being, an individual sales rep as well as a CEO. There's different modes to it. And then I started thinking about it yesterday, Ryan, and I'm like, hold on, every sales rep is a CEO of their own business. Like everyone is. So why are we not acting like our business is a Fortune 500 company? And then I started looking at the sales part of it and the marketing part of it and all that. And I went down this like huge rabbit hole for a good 2 hours after the show, just creating some awesome frameworks that I'm going to start implementing. And once I kind of refine them, I'll bring them to the show for everybody. But it was a really great conversation, brother. You should listen back to, I know you had to jump, but you should listen back to it. It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, anytime you can get Nicole on here, somebody who's like-minded. I think she was like CEO of the year. I think it was either last year or this year itself. So, shout out to anytime you can get Nicole. Recommend everybody follow her. Who's watching stuff like that, see her amazing content because she's somebody who's out there who's really putting herself out there and things like that. So awesome, man! But today is Data Day. I'm so excited. I haven't been on here in forever, So looking forward to being back with the crew and seeing what's going on. So
yeah, well, I think we've got. Some interesting things in the work that can change the industry in as little as the next 48 hours. And anyways, we'll bring Dean on because Dean are the master of data. Whoa, that's a deep shot. Look at that. That one was deep. And then we got Jeff. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, Dean, I had you on the old like when you remove Jeff, all of a sudden it's like you grow.
Yeah.
In the way these.
That's gonna scare people away. Don't you?
No one's watching anyway, so so no one's getting scared. They're just like they hit the replay on this.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Someone will do the screen grab for the promo piece, right? It'll be this massive big melon.
Yes, of course. That's exactly what it's going to do. Yeah,
like my people do here, they always get the one with my eyes closed and they screen grab that as the promo piece. I think,
why?
Stop. Why do you do that?
I've seen lately the promo piece for you is the one standing in front of Grumpy Pete.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That reminds me, I need to get over there and fire the bad boy up. Get flat batteries. On account of my not being there because of my knee. So.
Oh, you can get into it now?
I can just get up into it. Yeah.
Good for you.
but I got to get down on my knees to pull the 4 batteries out and bring them back to charge them. So that's
that must be
it's hard.
delightful doing
They're
that.
like 50 pounds a piece.
You can get on your knees? Seriously?
No, I can't. That's the problem.
Oh,
I would have to get on my knees and lay on the ground because it's under the step box.
So is that not like a case of beer favor for a buddy or something?
Well, I did offer multiple cases of beer for a guy to start it every week for me while I was off, and he works in the same yard, and that lasted 2 weeks, and he just forgot to do it. So I've ended up with, so we're talking $1,200 for 4 batteries.
Well, that's what you get when you offer him Miller.
Yeah. If I were you, I wouldn't be buying that guy any beer, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So Dean, market update. I know obviously, with a couple of things happening across Florida and then some of the hurricanes and tornadoes and stuff coming in, things can change at a drop of a dime here. But what's going on with the 12-month outlook?
Yeah, it's and look, so, in all fairness, I derive a lot of my insights on the macroeconomic front from people like Jason Miller, who's arguably been one of the best at calling the market. And I say that because in the last, 4 to 5 years, we've had a lot of volatility, a lot of things that are unprecedented. We've never had data points to draw from. He's been particularly good at making the call. And one headline really caught my attention, and it's somewhat worrisome. It was in the Journal of Commerce, and the headline really was that the data shows the US is in the midst of an extended period of inventory drawdown to the extent that it could last well into next year. And I was emailing back and forth with Jason this morning, and I said, I'm really surprised that the over-ordering of 2021 is still impacting the 2023 freight market. And he said, so am I surprised. He was as surprised by it as anybody, because he went back and he broke down all of the data points to prove why we've got such a rapid, we had such a rapid build of inventories and then such a slow drawdown. He thinks soft freight volumes could last well into the middle of 2024, which is a really sobering thought when we think about the partners that we all work with, whether it be on a shipper or a broker or a carrier side. Another 12 months of this, and diesel prices are going the wrong way. I know it was just a really interesting headline, Dan, and because we've gone from things picking up in the fall, this like as in next month or two, to that not happening, and we'll have imports for next week's show to see what August imports look like. But I think we're right on the money by saying July's numbers were probably the peak. August will probably see a lower number. How much lower, I don't know. So we're looking at a non-existent peak season. And then, of course, Q1 is always the quiet season. And then we're into Q2 before most of the experts think that the market will show signs of picking up, largely because of the excessive ordering that we went through in 2021. I'm just sort of gobsmacked by the fact that something that happened 2 years ago is still impacting the freight market today. And I guess it's not surprising if you think about the amount of inventory that we ordered from overseas. You think about all those containers that came in and all the backlog of ships. And so, he went down and he said furniture is down down 9% from its high last year. Apple.
But are we comparing, Dean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but are we comparing like completely outrageous years against each other? And what I mean by that is like in 2019 and heading into the beginning of 2020, everybody said, well, you can't really do anything with 2018 or 19 because market rates went so high in 18 and plummeted in 20 or 19, sorry. Like, are we, what year is this data being compared to? Like, if it's compared to COVID, then we're already artificially inflating numbers because of all the ordering we had in COVID. And I'm wondering if so if you can answer that for me, and then I have another question.
No, and his article was comparing it to pre-COVID 2019 numbers, right? And then you can see the inventory go up in 2021, 2022, and then you can see it coming back down. And he looks at inventory to sales ratios and total inventory levels. So you can see that the ramp up was incredibly high, and then the drawdown has been much slower than people anticipated.
Okay,
Across
so
a range of
our
lines.
freight volume levels are on par with 2019 or below 2019?
But on par, maybe slightly above, Dan. If as a total freight market, some commodities are up, some are going to be down for sure.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
But the headline was he thinks it's the largest inventory correction cycle in modern economic history. Like, that's a staggering statement. Then, of course, all in response to the demand of 2021. So I think he's right. When you look at the sales numbers that he's pulling into the data set, you can see that whether he's talking about Hasbro, Mattel, you can see that the inventory levels, you can see how they spiked in 2021, and they're only just coming down now to on par with 2019 levels. So that's sort of.
I want to touch on that a little bit in terms of toys, because I feel like I got a little bit of an inside advantage here. Not a lot of people know this, but I actually been working like part-time actually at a toy store at our mall, just because I need to like get that physical interaction again. So I maybe work like one shift a week. So it's called Mastermind Toys here. And the amount of toys, so we average like maybe like 2 skids a week. That are basically that come in, and I see it packed up. It's actually ASL who brings them in, but we're seeing like you're talking about like Hasbro, and you're even talking about Mattel. Like, our store is basically filled with like the Barbie stuff because of the movies, but there's a lot of recycling going on too. Because here's one of the things, we got like brand new Tamagotchis. I don't know if you guys remember Tamagotchis, or anybody who's watching out there. It was those little kind of things. It was kind of like you kind of like had like a baby. You had to feed it. It was digital. It was one of the OG kind of like toys, I would say, before smartphones.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we're seeing those come back. But then, Dean, when I actually look at the back of it, these boxes have the licensing from like 2019, 2020. So that means that it's been holding since. And it's kind of funny enough because like we have our own, what do you call it? Our own in-house brand. So Mastermind Toys. And so they're actually like branded Mastermind. We get 90% of our stock is all that stuff that our private brand that we're trying to sell. So what you're saying too with like Hasbro and like Mattel, I know Dan's worked with Hasbro, I think it was in the past. They were saying the same thing when I was talking to them. It's all like LTL like inventory. Like, you'll never see like a full truckload go to like one of the ASL distribution places, because it's just not like, even the price of these things too. Like, you guys thought Legos were expensive. Like, Legos are ridiculously expensive, but you look at Hot Wheels, which obviously is Mattel, and then you look at Hasbro, where they kind of focus on those like baby toys, but we're barely seeing any of those. So, but they're flying off the shelf. The stores are busy, like we've been told, but now until I want to say till Christmas, it's all hands on deck. But then that January to, I want to say, June, it's going to be dead. It's going to be completely dead. So you're going to look at those things. But you think that consumer spending is down, but you'd be surprised how many people just come in here and just drop like $300-$400 like nothing.
Really?
Just spending it. Like, we're hitting like on average, where the store itself, and I'm talking our store itself, is averaging making about $7,000 to $9,000 a day. $7,000 to $9,000 a day,
In
so
toys, wow.
in toys, and that's what we kind of sell. So it's good that you're saying these about these inventories, because it's good for people out there, of like freight brokers or freight agents or like that, are looking, hey, I want to get into toys because it's busy. Well, you're a little bit too late, because you really should have been having these discussions during the off season, which I definitely say is like January to June.
Right.
So do you think some of the, also when it comes to toys specifically, I remember when the kids were small, you'd be able to pack the Christmas tree for like $500, and I mean pack it like with $2 dolls, $5 dolls, like and nowadays it's like, I want an iPad for Christmas, all this other crap. But it's Ryan, you said something where you said like the price is unbelievably expensive. Like, I used to get 15 Lego toys as a kid, like the different helicopter, the different boxes, and they were so cheap. Like, you guys think this inflated prices of everything is also coming into play when it comes to consumer spending? Because I'll be honest with you, I watch what I buy.
Everybody does. I think, like, even to Dean's point as well, another point that I forgot to mention as well is that we're clearing out all the summer stuff. So right now we've literally marked down every single thing that is summer related to 70%. you know. So like you think about those losses too. But to answer your question, Dan, it's around the block because Fetch and Release, that's the dog rescue I work with. We do a lot of events, and I do other events with dog rescues where we actually have like events where we sell merch or we sell dog toys. When people come to these things, like we're not making as much money as we were last year. You know, people are just kind of browsing now. You know, they're not really like spending the money. Like, hey, I'm going to buy some dog leashes. I'm going to buy different things, and people are being more conscious. Like you're saying, like you know, Dean's mentioning here that the next 12 months, you know, freight might be down. So if you are a freight broker or something like that, you might have to diversify. You know, you might have to go do a second stream of income. You know, might have to go get a second job. Or we're not trying to make it too bleak or something like that, but even now, like we're talking about interest rates in Toronto, in Canada, just being ridiculous. You go on TikTok, it's brutal here. I don't know how it is in the States, but I know with the general election, maybe that will ramp up. That's coming up as well with the Republicans and all that stuff. That usually kind of gives a little bit boost to the economy a little bit, right? But I'm interested to see, man. I'm interested to see what Thanksgiving and Christmas is going to look like for a lot of families.
Even Lowe's, right? So Jason, I think would post on Lowe's order. They're a big purchaser of transportation capacity. You know, this is more problematic for carriers, but orders in Q2 of this year were 20% lower than Q2 of last year. It just means, you know, and we already heard that they're putting out Christmas decorations. And I think to your point, Ryan, there'll certainly be not necessarily brand new this year's orders. They will be inventory from last year. Yep. But it just means a lot of this freight's already been hauled. We've already moved it and it's sitting in warehouses. So that's why I think the outlook is somewhat bleak and maybe a little bit bleaker than I thought it would be. And of course, we're still losing capacity. Like truckload capacity is still pretty good compared to where it was. You know, if you look at where it was in 2019 levels, we're still losing capacity, but we haven't lost anywhere near the amount of capacity that entered the market. Yeah, the number of for-hire carriers from January 2020 to now, the number of for-hire carrier companies has doubled. Wow. Like so we've gone from like 220,000 to 440,000 for-hire companies with DOT authorities in interstate commerce. But what's interesting is the growth has been in the small carrier owner-operator size, right? So as the number of establishments have increased, employees per establishment has plummeted. So it means a lot of the growth is in smaller establishments with fewer employees, namely owner-operators. And this is where it gets really hard to see where the growth is because the data from the government doesn't tell you what size the vehicle is. But if you just go out on our interstates, you can see, well, I can over the years, a lot more hot shots, a lot more straight trucks, box trucks, lift gates. In particular, hot shots, that's one that really gets my attention because they're pulling half truckloads all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And you see a disproportionate amount of those guys running around. And they had an incredible growth during the pandemic because they were able to move a lot more freight more quickly with less damages, less handling, cheaper. And they were moving, you know, half truckload consignments at a clip. And according to Nicole Glenn on our recent show we had her on, we asked her that question: do you think the growth in hot shots and expediters will be sustained? And she said, absolutely. Shippers have changed their method of moving a lot of freight, and that includes more part loads. Her contention was it was more to do with less handling and fewer damages, right? So fewer cargo claims because you've got a smaller vehicle involved with less touch. So that's part of that growth. I think that's still there. That those vehicles are still there. Yeah. So I think we are losing we're not losing as many of those types of operators as we are large spot market tractor trailers. It's evident they are leaving the industry because they're at the top end of fuel consumption and fuel costs.
Yeah.
They've gone up 70 cents a gallon since July 4.
Yeah, you know, this isn't a surprise what we're talking about right now, because if we go back months on this show, you know, I said it was over. I said this year is over and we should be looking forward to 2024. We talked about peak Dean many, many different times. We talked about Jason Miller, and at the time he saw no specific vertical that was the aha boom moment that's going to change everything. Everything was bleak. It was. And then I shared information with you, Dean, of a article that I read on a trend, and multiple ones said we're not going to get out of this until deep into the second quarter of 2024. And it just seems like, you know, the worst case scenario is following right into that funnel and doing exactly what it said. So The
Yeah.
thing is that whoever's thinking about the present year and trying to get by, they really should be thinking about the future and trying to build those relationships. Dan's talked about it. Ryan's talked about it. You know, we've all talked about how important relationships are right now, you know. And the thing is, what's really dictating this is the data. We're taking the emotional aspect totally out of the data. We're using great data points from years past by quarters, by weeks, and saying, this is what's happening, guys. This is not an emotional call. This is data, specific fact data that we're all relying on, that we have to take into consideration. You know, don't be dumbfounded and say it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. So what are you going to do now? That's the biggest question. What are you going to do right now in the bear market in which we're working, and which is going to be a long haul? That's the biggest question.
Well, it's a good point that you bring up there, but I do want to give a disclaimer too. Like, people are calling bear market. I haven't seen a bear market. Like, I seriously haven't seen a bear
It's
market.
down.
And well, for you it is, not for me. I'm having profitable months.
Oh
you
no,
know.
no.
So yeah,
Even
but
for me, I'm up 75%.
so then you're being a hypocrite by saying that like it's a bear
That's
market
not.
because
It's
like
not. I mean,
yeah, it
because
is,
most
because
companies are failing right now.
that's your opinion though, you know. That's your opinion. So like, it's like when you're kind of saying like, you know, think about like 2024. I think that's common sense to tell people that though, because everybody looks at like a 12-month, a 24-month, a 36-month period anyways. Nobody's looking short term. Like, what you're kind of saying is like, hey, like, look for like next year. I'm closing business right now, you know. So like, if I'm closing business, other people are closing business, right? So
Sure.
it just comes back to like, coming back to what everyone's kind of saying, like, use the data, like take the data too, but don't be about it like it's 100% and it's fail proof, because it is data at the end of the day. But don't be like, hey, I'm not going to sell and let me worry about next year and build relationships. You should already be building relationships regardless, you know. Like, you have to be doing that to be successful. Even like transactional brokers I talk to, they're up. Like, a lot of people are up. Dan talks about pharma as well, but like, you know, like, those things have to move. So when we look at it, my point of view for everybody, like with our topic here being like that 12-month outlook, yeah, you should be looking at 12 months all the time. You know, that's my opinion. It's not like from Jan 1st to December 31st, but you do have to understand that, you know, you have to essentially do the work and build those relationships, have the conversations with people. And then, you know, articles are great for a point of view, because let me give you guys a great example. Somebody posted that like sugar's down, like, you know, production's down, and, you know, there's not going to be barely any Halloween candy and stuff like that. I called up Red Path Sugar, who's like in Toronto here, is one of the biggest sugar suppliers. They're like, what outage or shortage are you talking about? You know, we're up right now. You know, everything's going, we're moving. If anything, we're up like 20%, he was saying. Right. So I understand, like, you got to kind of fact check and use the data as well. But that's why we watch like Dean's show and stuff like that. And that's why we have Dean here to kind of give that out as well.
In what, Ryan? Like, you're talking about sales, revenue?
In sales. Yeah. Sales and production.
But inflation adjusted sales revenue is up for everybody this year, right?
Well, no, in production itself, like shipments itself, because I talk on the shipments, not the shipments itself that's moving out. Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, like with any increase or decrease in the market, it's all about what market you're in, right? It's not about the market as a whole. It never is. Even Dean will be the first one to say, you know, data is state by state, city by city, everything varies, and we can generalize about the data. But I mean, there's some places that are just booming right now. You look over the next 48 hours, how much is Florida going to have freight going to it, right? And it's just because of Idalia coming through. There's going to have to be, like, if it hits as the category 2 or 3 that they're talking about, it's going to create some serious damage.
Oh yeah, it already hit.
That's what's going to happen. It's, you know, right away, FEMA, truckloads, volume increases, rate increases, everything's going to come up. You know, you look at the forest fires in Western Canada, you look at all of this, like entire communities burning down. They're not going to sit there like forever. They're going to be built in no time. So there's all these different things happening in the world that can change this information right away. And,
absolutely,
you know, again, Ryan, very valid point that, you know, certain people are feeling the hit. Like Dean said, 20-something% down in furniture. If your business is furniture, you're probably feeling that hit right now. Probably. If your business is road salt, you're jamming right now because it's starting to hit every single silo. You know, it's interesting you brought up that sugar, Ryan, because I read a report in the Wall Street Journal talking about like raw sugar production is down and we're, you know, get ready for an explosion in sugar prices. And this is where, just like what happened with coffee, a year ago, when coffee production was down like 62%. You go to somebody like Starbucks, you say, what's going to happen? They say, no, we've got like a year stockpiled of coffee. We're good. Even though the price did this. Now, did all the prices at Tim's and stuff go up? Yes, they did. But a lot of these companies have stockpiled their raw product through COVID. So they're probably going, thank God I did, because I bought it at a cheaper price than it is now.
Right.
Agree? Disagree?
Oh, I agree completely. Like, I think, like, when you're looking like the coffee, like, here's the thing too, like, you look at the prices increases, like everyone talks about groceries and stuff like that, but like you said, Dan, you're looking at being a more budget costly, like, you're looking at flyers now, you're planning your budgets. Like, people that I kind of talk to, they kind of base like their grocery list off of what's on sale that week, right? Instead of saying, hey, I'm gonna have steak today, I'm gonna have fish this week and stuff like that. Like, oh, okay, well, if bacon's on sale, okay, we'll plan our breakfasts around that and things like that. So I think, like, when you're kind of talking about it, it's just like we said, it's just for everybody who's kind of watching it, we want to kind of drive that point that, you know, like, it, like you're saying, furniture is down. If furniture is down, then, like, you know, pivot. You know, you're a sales rep. You know, you can be an SME of whatever you want, but pivot and learn, because this is your life. This is your livelihood. As Dan was kind of saying, we are the CEOs of our lives if you have your own business. So it's up to you. It's up to nobody else, right, Jeff? Like, you have to really kind of put yourself and pivot into those things. Like, you can't be a one-trick pony, as they kind of say.
No, well, that's why these days are so important, and the information Dean gives out and Jason Miller gives out is super important, because if you're noticing a slide in your specific industry, become an expert in another industry. You know, like, it's I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's fairly simple, right? You spend a couple of days learning about the industry, learning about the market, learning about everything, and then you start making phone calls. Right. What else we got, Dean?
Rates are still going down. You know, if you think about a leading indicator of where the market's at, spot rates are still, although they did flatline a bit today, I think that's probably more of an aberration. They flattened mainly because shippers started to move a lot of inventory ahead of this weekend. That normally happens in the 2 weeks out from Labor Day. Mm-hmm. So there was a volume increase last week, which, you know, rates kind of tightened a little bit. But when I say tightened, they'd stopped falling, and it's kind of flatlined a little bit. But, you know, that's a national level. If you think about national level rates at $1.97 excluding fuel, a lot of the value is regional. Or at a lane level where you can be doing exceptionally well, like Fresno to Phoenix is $3.34 a mile, excluding fuel, as opposed to $1.97 on the national average. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for carriers and shippers, and, you know, maybe not so much brokers when they're going to be paying that much to move those loads. You know, Fresno to Dallas was flat at $2.22. The Pendleton to Los Angeles lane is at $1.35, which isn't spectacular, but it normally increases to around $2 a mile by the time we get to Christmas. So it's got another 60 to 70 cents a mile to go before we get to the end of the Pacific Northwest produce season. So some lanes will be much, much higher than the national averages. So that's why you've got to look behind the national average. Whilst it tells you where the total market is, a lot of the opportunity is at the regional level, even the lane level.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. And, you know, also equipment level, you know, so you got regional, and then you got different equipment, right? If you're running flats, reefers, dry vans, LTL, truckload, like, there's multiple variations there as well, right? For it to be good. I mean, listen, I guess if we look at the data, and the data tells us all around the general freight market is down, we go back to some markets are up, some markets are really down, which creates a downturn in an overall industry wide, I guess. Is that what you mean, Dean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some markets that are always hot. For example, one reefer market out of Eastern Maryland, Virginia is like, there's just a continual shortage of refrigerated trucks. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you why. It's just an area that's, the USDA reports a shortage of trucks. Our rates are always high out of that area. I suspect it's something on the inbound side. That's the home of sweet potatoes. And some potato chip processing plants. It's also a lot of watermelon production comes out of that area. So, equipment level is a good point, Dan, because there's it's very different as you get down to the more specialized, for sure. Even flatbed is somewhat specialized compared to dry van and reefer, but those rates aren't doing anything spectacular. But again, some of those lanes that you could run, like Oregon, for example, if you look at Oregon outbound rates, they're kind of the highest they've ever been. When I say ever, back to 2016. So there's, Oregon's a massive lumber producing area. And so if you can get to that area, you can do exceptionally well with outbound loads. Your national average is about $2, but you can be earning $2.56 a mile as a carrier to run that particular lane down to California out of that area, out of Portland.
Another
really
segment, I guess I'm going to call it, is hazmat. I run quite a bit of LTL hazmat,
right,
and I can't tell you how much the prices have increased in the last 2.5 months. Now, they've always been higher, and over the last probably 3 years, we've noticed a very steep decline in hazmat carriers. But over the last 2.5, 3 months, I mean, we're talking from Ontario to Ontario, like $600 for 2 skids.
Whoa.
And they literally say, this is what it's going to cost you, and I'm there on Tuesday. If it's ready, great. If not, I'll be there next week. And it's like, and we have to get the product ready and conform to the service time of the supplier, of our partner. And it's one of, out of all the business I do, it's the only segment of business that we cannot just say, okay, well, that doesn't work for the customer, we'll get somebody else tomorrow, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we go back to the customer and say, listen, if you want it moved this week, it's got to move like within this time period. More and more LTL carriers are getting away from it. They're canceling their hazmat authorities. Either that, or they have specific freight and they don't take anything else, because it's gone from finding a truck in, so we do like Jersey, PA, Illinois area into Ontario and Quebec. And it's gone from, 6 months ago, 15 minutes to find a truck, 20 minutes to find a truck, to almost an hour, just because they just seem to be disappearing. So if anyone's in the hazmat world, love to have you on and share with us kind of what's going on in that specific world, because we're noticing a steep decline. I am noticing a steep decline for the areas that my customer ships in, right? Again, maybe not other areas, but for the areas my customers ship in.
Yep. Some carriers don't want the hassle. It's probably the most over-inspected trailer type by a long way.
It's
like,
so
hazmat placards on. That's like a red flag. Pull me over and check my paper.
Don't do that. Dean, I want to ask you your favorite question, actually, to Jeff and Dean. Dean, your favorite commodity. It's coming up, and I want the audience to understand it. Christmas trees. Every year we always talk about Christmas trees. It's a pretty big industry. So for people out there,
Labor Day.
I know, but we gotta get people prepared for it. So 2 questions for you, Dean. Christmas trees. What insight can you give about that? And boxes. What the hell is going on with cardboard boxes? I read your blog post yesterday. I'd love for you to give some insight on that.
Yeah, Christmas tree season is going to be coming up, dominated by Quebec, outbound Quebec, and outbound
Oregon.
West Oregon. So they'll start 3 weeks ahead of, about 3 weeks out from Thanksgiving. They'll start shipping container loads to Hawaii of trees. It's also when they start doing all of the ornaments. So, wreaths and things like that. That starts in that sort of early October timeframe, or maybe late October. And then the busiest week for shipping trees is the Monday after Thanksgiving. So that's when the busiest week is from a volume perspective. And you'll see a demand for flatbed, reefers, and dry vans for all of those. Some farms, I think, prefer to load flatbeds because they'll load them by helicopter. And you see a lot more of those. I think my instinct is you'll see a lot more of them move probably right before Christmas. I mean, you see it's very busy over Thanksgiving, but it's also a time when a lot of drivers want to be home. So capacity tightens for a number of reasons. So that's kind of the season. But you'll see truckload carriers. What always fascinates me is as things get quiet and colder, and in some modes, you'll see them jump under a flatbed and be hauling Christmas trees, which for a lot of them, it's not the best thing to be hauling because it leaves sap all over it. You've got to have a blower to blow all the leaves. And it's multi-drop, and it's hand unload. It's up there with floral. It's up there with like Mother's Day flowers where you're back on the docks without, or not even docks, but you don't have forklifts, and it's hand unload because it's live, it's stacked from the floor up.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, not a lot of fun. And generally, the places you unload Christmas trees aren't the most conducive for big trucks.
Yes.
Is the other thing. So, so that's my Christmas tree story, and I'm sticking to it.
What about your cardboard story?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to pull the data. I know that was an interesting one.
Because if you guys have noticed on
indicator.
Amazon,
Yeah,
if you've purchased on Amazon over the last couple of weeks, you'll notice that it says save on packaging, ship all your orders together. Like if they're scheduled for delivery on different dates.
That's BS. And that is absolutely crap. And I don't know about you, and if I'm sure that you've looked at the packages that you received, but when I say this, I kid you not, I received a small package like this, right, from Amazon. And I'm not shitting you when I say this. It was in a box this big with air in it. I mean, they put in those
air bubble things.
Air bubble things. And I was like, I don't get it. I mean, you talk about saving on corrugated and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, it just seems like this works. Just shove it in there and we'll put it up. It's just like, what the hell? I mean, yes, Amazon has a contract with UPS or FedEx, and it doesn't matter the size. It's on zone, and they get this specific one. It doesn't matter the density and the size of the box. It's a set rate. But come on, I mean, it takes up a lot of space in this truck. Besides Amazon stuff, you got other, I mean,
I wonder if, without saying it, they have a shortage of box sizes, which is why they do that.
Well, it means
even if you get batteries,
means that they don't have control of their corrugated inventories, and that they're not looking at the data and the biggest size. Do we ship more 6 cubes, 8 cubes, 10 cubes? Rectangles, coffins. We used to call them. The big boxes. I don't know, but it seems like something's missing big time there. Big time.
The data point, Ryan, that I got my attention. And I always look for things that might be potential indicators of, where the market's going. The North American box manufacturers, there was an association that had a report out, and they tracked the volume of cardboard boxes. They said they'd fallen to 2019 levels, the amount of cardboard boxes, of course, which goes into freight that we haul on pallets mostly.
Pretty much everything, yeah.
And it was down about 4% last year, but back to 2019 levels. And I think Jason did a study also and showed that retail levels had reverted back pretty much to 2018, 2019 levels based on census data. That's as of Q2 this year. So that's I just thought that was another data point that kind of confirms where we're at as a total tonnage perspective. Yep. I remember how to get hold of the pallet. The pallet data would be more interesting if I could get the 48 by 48 inch hardwood pallet data. That might be a better indicator.
And a lot of these shippers too, guys, they're redesigning their supply chain. We're talking about less truckloads, more LTL. They're holding their LTL shipments for days and optimizing that to fill up a single truck. So instead of shipping out an LTL shipment on Tuesday to the same customer on Thursday and a Friday, they'll hold Tuesdays and Thursdays consolidated on a Friday. And then they'll do a volume move, or they may even have enough to fill up a truckload. And they'll call up their vendors and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm saving you money by consolidating 3 days, worth of your ordering. It's going to save you X. Can you do that? Can your supply chain afford a 3-day lag? I mean, they're having those conversations, and if they're not, you should be talking to your customers if they're a big LTL shipper and ask that exact question. Can you hold off and I can save you a little bit more money?
Yeah, completely agree with that. And even at the store, we see that too. Like our shipments are supposed to come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it just feels they come in when they want to come in. We'll get that knock on the back door and we're like, okay, shipment's here, right? So when you're talking about retail too, like the actual employees and stuff, like, they don't have control over that. So it's obviously the people, the bigwigs and the LTL companies saying, hey, let's just fill this up a truck. It's going to save us. And, we can get our deliveries out to you guys when we can. You guys will make do.
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
And then when you talk about retail as well, it's just like, people now, like, they're quick to just go on the phone anyways. It's like I literally have my phone on the floor all the time because I'm like, hey, we don't have it in stock, but you can order it online, and then get it delivered over to you or something like that. So
Yeah, when you go to
think
malls, though, I mean, when you go mall delivery, it's inside delivery, so you got an accessorial there. You got white glove delivery. Some of them have very small warehousing in the back to keep their goods. So you got dunnage removal as well. They want it unpackaged, all this kind of crap.
And the best part, you get to buy mall food for lunch. You get to go downstairs, go to the food court, and get some Panda Express or some.
Some Panda Express.
I love that.
So true. So true.
I looked at Dan. You asked a question, I think, earlier. I looked at the ATA truckload tonnage index, which is pretty good, reliable indicator of the contract side of the freight market, the tonnage side. If we go back to 2019, this time in 2019, it looks like we're about 3% lower than where we were in 2019 in terms of total tonnage. Now, remember, this is a survey-based index. It's down about 3.2% year over year, which again is not surprising given how much was moving even still last year, but about 3% there, give or take, compared to 2019.
Hey, Dean, going back to what you said earlier about peak in July, can you pull up that data, July of this year compared to July of 2019?
On the import side?
What's that?
Import?
Yeah, imports.
Imports, okay. Give me a second. I'll have to quickly get that. It was a little bit higher in July. It was equal in June, a little bit higher. If you give me a second here.
I'm just curious because I think that would be the tail of the tape as well, to see that, hey, you know what? Yeah, peak did happen, and then we saw a drop off. I mean, August isn't done yet, and we'll get that in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. But just curious.
Yeah, I'll be able to tell you exactly what it was here because it has reverted back to close to those levels. I'll know Monday what reports look like. So if I go to, we were at at in July it was 2.3 million. Ooh. In 2029 it was 2.285 million import TEU. So 2.285 to 2.3.
So we were down?
No, we were higher this July.
No, we're higher this
July.
July.
Up by 2. Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
By 15.
We were identical in June. July was, from memory searching, right about 119,000 higher. But I expect August. I think the next August drop will have numbers back closer to 2019 levels.
So that's interesting. We had a higher increase of imports, but yet volumes, capacity was really loose and rates dropped.
Right.
That's interesting.
Well, remember, imports are about 10% of truckload volume, total volume, right? So they're not, they're everything for drayage guys, but they're not the big driver. It's mostly domestic manufacturing that drives a lot of our truckload tonnage.
Yeah, but still, even at 10%, you would think with an extra 115,000 containers or whatever it was, 150,000 containers, that would add something,
Well, don't forget, intermodal got incredibly loose capacity.
Intermodal's
got a lot of empty boxes they're trying to fill. Those rates are pretty low. Truckload's not, truckload. If you look at intermodal spot rates versus truckload spot rates, shippers are saving on average about 40 cents a mile by moving intermodal on the longer haul moves. Intermodal owns that 1,500 mile plus market by a long shot. Because it's only when you get down under, and I think, Jeff, tell me if I'm right here, but once you get down under like maybe 600 miles, you've got too much.
Above that. Yeah. 700 is kind of ideal, but below 600, there's no profit at all. Yeah. No savings. The biggest savings though is your carbon footprint. If you have government incentives about saving and going green, because you have to remember, you can go 450 miles on a single gallon of fuel on a train. Isn't that baffling? You think about that whole thing. So, there's huge cost savings there only on specific lanes. Not
Right.
all lanes are good lanes to move intermodal. So, before you start throwing out OTR, you should go and check your IMDL lanes against the OTR and then see the margins or the difference in rates, and then say to your customer, hey, this is going to cost you another 2 or 3 days in transit time. Can you afford that? Is it worth the savings?
Right.
You have to have those kind of conversations with them. You can't just automatically say, this is the cheapest mode, go ahead and do it. It's what's going to happen on the backside of the business, and how is it going to affect your operation? So
engaging different departments, gentlemen. Engaging different departments. Yes, sir.
very true. Very true.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much for the update, Dean. What do we got coming up next week?
We've got on our show next week, we've got Shannon Breen from Freight Varna talking about the evolution of trailer pools. It's going to be an interesting discussion. Power only moves, which are another interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of carriers have sort of migrated back to that power only move. The average rate's about $1.75 a mile for power only if you're a trucker. That's so if you think about whether it's worthwhile being power only versus an independent contractor with your own trailer and authority, you need an extra 50 cents a mile on top of the $1.75 for it to be worthwhile. So if you take $1.75 plus the 50, spot rates would have to be around $2.25 per mile before it's worthwhile being your own independent contractor again. Reason I bring that up is rates were well north of $2.25 a mile, which is why we saw this massive surge of new carriers into the industry, because large truckload fleets, even though they increased the power only rate to about $2 a mile, it was still far more profitable to have your own trailer and authority when you could pull $3 a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, the data shows that you're about $11,000 a year worse off by being an independent contractor versus power only.
And not to mention, you save on a ton of maintenance because you can use the trailer brakes instead of your own brakes.
Oh, absolutely.
we absolutely, Dean says.
Absolutely.
I remember that we had owner operators that would use our trailers, and it was like, why are these trailers needing service in half the time that the other trailers do this? And I remember the owner saying, because he goes, they don't use their own brakes, they just use the trailer brakes all day long.
Yes, on that trolley brake the whole time. Just a side story. I was on I did some videos on Donna Pass, right? So I'm like a third of the way down Donna Pass on the eastbound side of I-80 when I was out there a few weeks ago. And I'm fascinated by how truckers come off the top of Donna Pass. So you're climbing for like 40 miles out of California, and you get to the top, and some guys just send it. Like they are in the inside lane of 3 lanes, flat to the boards. And then other guys are crawling down really slowly with their engine brakes on. And then there's the guy that's power only that's got the trailer brakes on, and they are on fire. The smoke is bellowing out the back of the trailer. So you got to say to yourself, how do you in a mile and a half smoke your trailer brakes? How do you do that? Like it's really, really hard to do. Well, the way you do it is you just jam the handbrake, the trailer brake on, and just let it go. Just send it.
Yep. Yeah.
And it just
like driving with your clutch halfway engaged.
No engine brake, nothing. It's insane.
Unbelievable.
Nuts.
Hey, didn't we change those set of tires like 4 months ago?
You got them like checking receipts and stuff. Like, hey, what's going on here? Like, let's reduce some costs.
Why is the inside tires always melted on your trailer when you bring it back? Right? Yeah,
that's right.
So,
you guys cheaped out on the tires. Yeah, you guys cheaped out on the tires.
It was like that when I found it. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right,
man. Take care.